Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of MTG Sin Senpai. I do apologize that it's been a hot minute since I recorded my last video. Life has been kind of hectic. There was the holidays, and there's just a lot of things that have happened recently. Nothing too severe, just busy overall. But I have a lot of content coming up soon. As you can see here, I do have some prize packs, some more prize packs, and then I have a couple of draft decks that I'm going to go over. The first one I'm going to go over is a regular Brothers War draft deck, and then this one is a nice special one, which was a collector's edition Brothers War draft, which was a lot of fun. For both of them, I did place, and that's where these two came. I believe I got third place in both of them. So unfortunately, I didn't get a bunch, but I did still place, and I still got some prize product, and that's what this is. And then I do have some promos over here as well that I'm going to go over as well. So let's just get into it. So first off, these were the picks that were set to the side. I decided not to run these cards in particular, but I can kind of go over why I picked them overall. This particular, and of course, when it comes to drafting, you have to make cuts to make your deck consistent. Some of the cuts that I made probably may not have been the best, but at least this is the decision I decided to go with. This particular card I do feel like is a fun way to make the game in your favor. I do have two of these, and I pulled out one, and this actually allows you to essentially win the game if there's like a stalemate, or if you and your opponent happens to be locked out. This particular 2-1 is actually a lot of power there. Initially, I did not value it that high, but as I've come to see more of the set and play more of the set, the sacrificing permanence is actually a mechanic that definitely can get out of hand. And I had a buddy of mine go first place with just two of these and a bunch of the decent sack mechanics, and it was insane. Pristine Talisman, I like this particular card myself. In this particular draft deck, I decided to cut it because I had a few other mana options, but I do like that gaining the one life, even if you're not using the mana to ramp, just gaining the life and ramping. It's a 2-for-1, and it's a lot of fun. That extra life does help. If you win by one life, you still win, regardless. So that's just something I've come to learn, that every point of life does matter. Tower Worker is a solid 1-3 for 3 mana. I actually pulled two of these, so that's why I cut this particular one. And mind you, once again, these are the cards that I cut. The 5 mana 4-4, this particular one has a lot of power. The fact that whenever it leaves the battlefield, it gains you 2 life. It doesn't have to die. It has to just leave the battlefield. So the initial 5 mana 4-4, not the best value, but the fact that it has the 2 life and it has the Unearth as well, allowing you to essentially cast it again from the graveyard and have it beat for 4 more, it's actually pretty decent. This is a very fun card. I like Death Touch mechanics, and yes, best is if, cast a late game as a 6 mana 5-4, but early game a 2 mana 1-1 Death Touch, still pretty solid. It's a good pick. This one was another ramp card, essentially. The fact that it's a 4 mana 2-3, it's not the best body, but it does provide you a power stone whenever it enters the battlefield. And if anyone that has played Brothers War at this point, it's been out for a couple weeks. If you've played Brothers War Draft, you'll know that those power stones do actually matter in the long run. Disenchant, just an amazing removal for enchantment specific. Normally I would mainboard it, but I actually had some decent removal in the deck itself, and I kept this more of a sideboard piece. If my opponent had a bunch of artifacts, I'll slide it back in, because there is that off chance there's a couple people that can actually play decks without important artifacts on the board. So that's why I did not mainboard that one. This one's a pretty decent battle trick for 3 mana. The fact that it gives you that lifelink and drawing a card, very important pieces. And if I remember correctly, the colors that are blue and black, there are a handful of cards that if you've drawn a second card for the turn, it gives you benefits. So this, during your combat, could potentially give you that benefit. Or if you're able to draw 2 cards during your opponent's turn, you'll be able to get those benefits as well. Thran Vigil, I like this particular card myself. The fact that it says whenever a artifact and or creature card leaves your graveyard, so you don't have to essentially reanimate you or unearth But those are the two main things that would allow you to do it. And then there are random cards that make you essentially exile cards from your graveyard for effects. There obviously is recursion. The unearth mechanic is a very strong mechanic. So that extra +1/+1 counter is actually pretty valid, and I like this card a lot myself. I happen to pull two of them, and that's why I pulled this particular one out. This one's actually a fairly decent 3 mana 2/1 flyer because there's a lot of recursion in this particular set. The fact that you're able to eat up a card, and if it's a creature, there's that upside of dealing that extra damage. Or actually, it's a loss of life, so it's not even dealing damage, and it's a flying body, so not too bad. Another one of those 2/1s. This one's a pretty decent 7 mana 3/3 double strike. The fact that it has enter the battlefield, you draw a card, that's the reason I kind of had this or picked it. Is it the strongest pick? Probably not, just because it doesn't, even for the prototype, it's only a 3 mana 1/1 double strike. But it does have that enter the battlefield trigger to draw a card. We do have ourselves a Deadly Riposte. This is a pretty okay removal card. I had other pieces of removal, so that's why I didn't decide to run this one, but I do like the dealing the 3 damage and gaining the 2 life. This is a pretty decent card if you have a bunch of unearth mechanic. Unfortunately, I didn't have the most, so I decided not to run that. Gix's Curse. I normally don't do the hand disruption that often, but I look at this more as a mana ramp card because it generates that Power Stone. So it's essentially 3 mana, make your opponents discard. No, not just make them discard. You get to look at your opponent's hand, then choose something to discard, and make a Power Stone. So a lot of pieces there. This one was a last pick, not that great. I don't value this card that high. Even the one time that my opponent was able to play this against me, it just stalled it for a turn, and I still killed him the turn after. So not the strongest. This one was more of a desperation grab because the rest of the pack, there was nothing worth grabbing. And obviously I did not run it, so that's why it's over here. I pulled this one out because I had two of them. The fact that it says Unleash Shell, every time I say it, it just sounds off to me because obviously you have to play on Unleash Hell. But it's actually a pretty decent instant mana, 5 damage, and it deals extra damage to your opponent, so it's not the worst. This one, I know self-mill is a mechanic, and I know it technically works for some. Myself personally, I don't usually run the self-mill mechanic, so I'm not the biggest fan, but the fact that this is at instant speed, it might be playable, but myself personally, not the biggest fan of it. And this card is just trash. It is terrible. If you happen to run it in your draft, more power to you, but I can't see a reason why you would want to. I mean, the possibility of gaining the life from that only if you have more than 4 cards in hand, so you have to have minimum of 5 cards in hand to gain 1 life. It's just not worth it. And especially in draft with the 40 card format, with mill being a very valid option for you to get killed by, it's just not that good of a card. But that was more of a final pick. There was nothing else in the pack. Now, getting into the bread and butter of the deck itself, here we go. This is a 1 mana 1/2 that, yeah, it's not the strongest, but it fuels the Thran mechanic, it fuels the sac outlet, it does options, and the fact that it has built-in recursion. I like the card myself personally, and I did misread it and say it does say go to your hand, not the battlefield, but even then, it's still a pretty decent card, I feel. Now, would I run more than one in a deck? Probably not, but it does get the job done. This one, Ashnod, the Flesh Merchant, Flesh Mechanist. God. I like this card a lot. This actually did a lot of things. The fact that it allowed me to create Power Stones, I never really used that function too often, but there are some enchantments that essentially lock down your creatures or keep them tapped permanently, and if you're not doing anything with them, might as well sack them. And then that 5 mana ability to exile a creature from your graveyard to make a 3/3 colorless zombie, it was a double whammy in my particular deck because I had the Thran Vigil and this making essentially a 3/3 and then putting a +1/+1 counter on a body. And my deck was pretty creature heavy, you'll happen to see. So that one I like is a lot. I like this particular one a lot, Ashnod's Intervention. The fact that it kind of sucks the fact that there are similar effects that have put the creature from the graveyard back to the battlefield, But I believe the reason that they worded this one the way that they did is so that prototype cards can't get broken. So it makes sense. But the fact that it does allow your card to leave the graveyard again was another element that actually was pretty powerful. And the extra +2 damage actually did help me win out one of my games. So it was pretty good. One of the two ones, I decided to run one of them. As you saw in this particular pool, I had three. I chose to just run one because, like I said earlier, you have to make cuts, and sometimes it's just what you have to do. The Mine Worker, I decided to run because I actually happened to get all three pieces. And while I had all three active, I believe I had them active for one game, and essentially it helped me to get past my opponent value-wise. Because having them all together, the fact that this gives you 3 life every turn, the other one gives you 3 mana for each turn, and then the final one allows you to give it +1 or 2 +1/+1 counters until end of turn, or instead of the +2/+2 until end of turn. So eventually I was able to outvalue them just because they didn't have answers or removals for my pieces. This particular card is not the best sack outlet, but it was one of my few sack outlets that I was able to grab, so I decided to run it. It was pretty relevant, even to the point that my opponent decided to run the Phyrexian. I forget the name of the card now, but it was the 2 mana 2/1 that whenever it enters the battlefield, you choose a card name, and then those cards cannot use their activated abilities. So essentially, I could still cast the spell, but it would just be a 2/2 bear with no ability, with an ability that I cannot activate because of his creature. Emergency Weld, I like recursion cards a lot, and this particular one's a pretty decent one. The fact that it brings your creature back to your hand, or artifact, by the way, and it makes a 1/1 colorless soldier artifact creature token is pretty decent. I decided to run 2 of them because I had some pretty high value, powerful cards in the deck. This is actually a pretty decent card. The fact that it allows you to sack an artifact or a creature, so generate a bunch of power stones, use a power stone to fuel this, and just straight up destroy a creature or a planeswalker. So it's actually a pretty good removal, I feel. That Thran Vigil, like I discussed earlier, in this particular deck, it just had a lot of moving pieces that just all happened to work together if I happened to assemble them. And a majority of my games, I actually got there, and my opponents were unable to keep up with the value. Even though they removed a lot of my pieces, I had enough of the recursion to get them back, play them again, and eventually outvalue my opponents. So it was actually pretty good. The only person that I lost to was a very aggro prowess deck, and I happened to get mana flooded both games. So if things had gone out a little bit differently, who knows? But that is Magic for you. This is a 3 mana 1/3 that draw card mechanic that I was talking about earlier. Whenever you draw your second card for the turn, give it a +1/+1 counter, and then whenever this dies, it allows you to bring back a creature to the battlefield that had mana value equal to or right less than or equal to its power. So it actually is able to grab another recursion piece. So it was pretty strong, I feel. This is that 1/4 I was talking about that I was able to. This is another card that my opponent played or that my opponent named and locked down the ability, but it was still the fact that he had to lock down this ability to prevent me from just killing him. It was pretty fun, and it's a very strong card, I feel. That Tower Worker, like I discussed, it's one of the 3 pieces. I happen to have them all, and it's pretty decent. It's a 1/3 reach that also generates mana, so it's pretty strong, I felt. This one was because I had the plan of having a bunch of creatures in my graveyard. It's not the fastest to grow, but at the same time, it's a threat that if it's online, my opponents will have to deal with, and if they don't deal with it, it just gets too big for them to deal with. This is that flying 2/1 that I discussed earlier. Just it's good piece to graveyard hate, and it's a 2/1 flying body. This was one of the reasons why I decided to go into black. Gix Yawgmoth Praetor. This was definitely probably the biggest hit in this particular draft. I mean, if anyone's done Brothers War and they know what the set's about, this card is one of the stronger cards in the set, and it definitely did outvalue. Like I said earlier, it just the value that I was able to generate. This was one of the pieces that helped that to happen. This one I look at just as a solid 3 mana exile a non-land permanent. Yes, there are other pieces to it, but in limited, the way I look at it, it's just looking to exile a card And technically this might be relevant in the sense that there is Helm of the Host in this particular set. So during a draft, you might have to deal with that, and this could answer all those tokens. So the chances of those interactions happening is very small, but it's there, and that's definitely a fun removal card. And the fact that it allows you to exile is pretty important. The Tome, I don't know how you, Jalum, the Tome. This was just a way to activate my second draw card effect for the turn, and it led me to essentially filter my deck. Loot, essentially, is what the term is. Very strong, and especially when you're looking to generate value. Like I discussed earlier, this is just a solid 3 mana discard and ramp card. This particular card, and if you notice at this point, majority of the deck is black with a very small hint of white. And so with the Steel Exemplar, usually, like, I never cast this and it wasn't a 6/6 essentially. So it's just a 5 mana 6/6 trampler. So pretty strong. The Power Plant Worker, the third piece of the assembly workers, and if you notice, that's where right here it says put 2+1/+1 counters on it instead, and only do it once per turn. So I did have this all three online at one point, and it was pretty insane. This particular uncommon, I do feel like has a lot of potential. The fact that it's another recursion piece, it allows you to grab a creature with artifact or creature. So a lot of these recursion pieces are artifacts or creatures, and this allowing it to grab a creature. And if you notice, Gix, a majority of the deck itself was 3 mana value or less, and so it allows you to grab them and pumps the team for +1/+0. I feel like it's just a really strong card. This is another one of the cards that had the draw your second card for the turn with the payoff. That 4/5 lifelink death touch is just something that your opponents have to just answer. And if they don't have something big enough to kill it with by itself, double blocking and losing both things because of that death touch, it's insane. Lots of power there. And this one is just solid removal at instant speed. Once again, this exiles the creature, and because of how many creatures I had pretty much die, this was used, I think the most I cast this for was at 2 mana. So, pretty strong removal card. And so that's deck 1, or at least that was the regular draft deck. And now this is the fun one. This is the collector draft. So this is the deck itself. So before we go into the deck itself, I'm going to go into the extra cards that I pulled. Windfall, this was not this was not part of the draft. This was just one of the promos that I happened to get, so I'm going to put this in the promo pile just because it was a fun card and I like to show off the Windfalls. I'm hopefully getting a playset of them, so we'll see. This one, I pulled this because I was attempting to do the Beaster Bird thing, but there's not enough Beaster Birds, and so at least that's what I was thinking about doing. And if I couldn't do it, this is actually a fun card to just build as a commander deck, so that's why I decided to pull it for myself. I do like Simic janky stuff, and this is like the definition of Simic janky stuff. It's a lot of fun. We got ourselves the Flow of Knowledge. This one I grabbed because I believe this was one of the last picks. Wasn't something I actually was in. Once again, another card that I grabbed because it was the last pick. I'm not the biggest fan of blue, but it is, sometimes it just happens to be last picks. This one I hate drafted just because counterspells, they're kind of detrimental in times, especially in limited. This particular one, if you notice, it's another Gix. But in this particular one, if you can tell, it's a little hard sometimes with the camera, but that is a beautiful foil version that I happen to pull. And yeah, I just decided that I needed to take this card. I was thinking about potentially splashing black, which I did actually in the end splash for black for one other card, but I could not fit the Gix in because of the double black, so I just decided to cut that. But I think I probably should have run it. We got ourselves a Death Charge Colossus. Even as a 6 mana 6/6 is pretty decent, and a 9 mana 9/9, it's not the worst. The chances of getting there is very likely. This is that 7 mana 3/3 double striker again. I grabbed this one thinking I might decide to ramp into it, but I chose not to. I had to make cuts, and this was one of the ones that didn't make the cut. This one initially I was thinking to run because I thought I might have grabbed enough soldiers, but unfortunately I didn't grab enough soldiers. But I have a dog deck that I have already, so I might slip this in. But this is more for a soldier deck that I might be building in the future. So here's the whole. I haven't decided just yet if I'm going to go that route or not. We'll see. The Unleashed Shell, this is just a solid removal piece. I decided to make that cut because of the double red, so that's the reason I chose not to run that particular one. This one, I think, was where on the end I didn't have too many other options. The fact that this is a decent battle trick and it does pump one of the creatures for that 1 mana, that's the reason I went with it, but I chose to make the cut because it just didn't fit. This one, initially, I was thinking about possibly memeing and running. Depending on how the board state would look, I would be able to essentially pick my, what is it, 5 permanents. Pick 5 of, or obviously this being one of them, um, and essentially picking 4 of my strongest permanents and hopefully just outlasting my opponent, but that totally depended. And so in the end, I decided to cut it, and I think this would be a lot of fun to build around for Commander, but in Limited itself, I decided not to run it because of the one-on-one aspect. The Legions of Ashes, another, is that exact same exile card. This one's just a borderless version, which looks very nice. This was definitely, I remember it being a last pick. I just, I mean, I see the potential in it. I just chose not to run it myself. Jalem's Tome, once again. This one's still a decent card, but I had other options, so I decided not to run this one. Sigil of Valor, this one was one of those cards that I decided to take up because I know I've seen some games where generating tokens is just insane, and swinging with one big beefy beater is a very likely thing. Hollowed Mind, this one, I was thinking about running initially, but I chose not to run just because in Limited, there's a small chance whenever you play this, you accelerate your opponent instead of yourself. So I decided not to run it, but this is definitely something I was planning on getting for my Shield Red deck in the future anyway, so I have that here. And then Liquid Metal Coating is definitely one of those fun cards, especially with the fact that you can turn anything into an artifact, pretty much. Yeah, any permanent. So if you have anything that says destroy target artifact, you can target someone's creature, someone's planeswalker, someone's land, make it an artifact until end of turn with this, and then blow it up with your spell or effect. So in Limited, it's not as easy just because there's only a few artifact destruction pieces, and then, you know, there's that chance that you don't even get them. But this is just a fun card that I actually have. There's a couple of my Selesnya decks that have aura shards, and it has some issues with being spot removal, and so this is one of the best ways to get rid of all of them. I run this and Liquid Metal Torque, which is essentially the exact same thing, but a mana rock built into it as well, and it allows you to essentially blow up permanents that are not artifacts and enchantments normally, but making them artifacts until end of turn allows you to aura shard it, so definitely a lot of fun. And then breaking into the deck itself, this one's a 1 mana, 1/1 mana dork that allows you to get mana of any color, but you do have to tap either an artifact or a creature, but the chances of having power stones or smaller other creatures or other creatures period is very common, so it's a decent mana fixer. This one's a mana ramp that I really like. The 2 mana 2/2. The fact that it has menace gives you the power stone. The drawback of it having to lose a power stone or sacrificing a power stone whenever this leaves the battlefield is a little bit of a nuisance. But at the same time, early game, depending on how you play it, it's actually pretty strong. This one, I love mana dumping effects essentially, especially into the late game whenever the game gets locked up. Swinging in your at your opponent with the board, with this on the board, even without this on the board, the fact this has flash, allowing you to use it as a battle trick and then pump the team to finish off the game. I just like the card. It's a lot of fun to me. This particular one is one of the commander cards. The fact that this is essentially ketchup ramp, but the gives you the option to, if it's the ketchup ramp, it puts the planes into play. If it's not, it puts it into your hand. Otherwise, it's just a 2 mana 2/2. It's pretty decent, and it actually helped me to get my lands out a couple times. So I like that card a lot. This particular one, Recommission, I do really enjoy the card. The fact that it's only a mana value of 3 or less, it's either an artifact or a creature, is essentially, this is is it Unearth, I believe is one of the card. The 1 mana that does the black sorcery that allows you to grab a creature with mana value of 3 or less. This allows you to do artifact or creature, and if it's a creature, it gets a +1/+1 counter for just 1 extra more in white. It's actually pretty strong, I feel, and there's plenty of creatures and or artifacts that have mana value less than three or less, that are just valuable. Perfect example being Gix. So there's that. Epic Confrontation, just a solid removal. It's a +1/+2, and fight your creature fights another creature. So this was one of the best ways to do so, or at least in the pool that I went with. This one's one of the weirder mechanics for a commander card. The fact that whenever you sacrifice a non-token artifact, you make a scrap token, allows you to essentially get double the effects of or double of these effects, which were pretty relevant because I was able to either make it big enough to get through, or essentially filter out cards from my deck. Burnished Heart, if anyone's played Magic long enough, they know this is a pretty decent card, but if you're new to the game and watching the channel, thank you. The fact that you're able to, it's a 3-mana 2/2 that you can either block with it and then sack it in response, or just a ramp, just use it to vanilla ramp. Especially when, if you've noticed, I have 3 different colors going on in this particular deck, so ramping definitely helped. That's what that was for. Another ramp piece. This one, I like this card a lot. 3-mana 2/3 that allows you to essentially cast, or you can splash for multiple different creature colors, and then if you play something big enough, it doesn't taps them and gives them a +1/+1 counter. So it's a pretty strong elf, I feel. This one, I believe I've discussed in previous videos, but this is just an amazing draw effect that I was able to take advantage of. And there's another piece that I'm going to show, yep, right after it. This one's a commander only card, so you're not going to see this in your regular Brothers War draft. But the fact that it allows you to draw a card whenever an artifact creature dies, and it allows you to pay 3 and generate a 1/1 colorless Thopter token, that's just double card draw with these 2 cards in play. And I had these both in play in multiple games, and those games I did win just because it pushed me that far forward. Pristine Talisman. With this particular deck, I needed a lot of mana ramp, so I decided to keep this in. And that 1 life that I gained, multiple games I had gained 10 plus life because I played this on turn 3, and so that did help keep me alive. Race to the Ground. I like this particular card because worst case scenario, if you really need to draw a card, you can destroy one of your opponent's tokens or something that has a 1 mana value, because usually there's a bunch of tokens that are just generated during draft, or you can just blow up a big artifact with it. And so that one I decided to main board for sure. The Excavation Explosion, just a decent 3 mana deal damage to anything, so 3 mana removal, and it's a Power Stone, so it allows you to ramp as well for your artifacts and abilities. The card draw effect of this particular one, at first I wasn't a big fan of this particular card, but as I've come to play it, it actually is pretty powerful, I feel. The fact that you're allowed to do it at instance... Ooh, excuse me, bless me. It's... sorry. But the fact that you're able to draw the card at instant speed, and depending on how many cards you already have in hand, that life gain is actually pretty substantial. I actually was going to lose to my opponent, but I was able to activate the Thopter to draw this card, and drawing this card, played this card, gained some, I believe a total of 5 life altogether, and I actually survived at 1 life. I still lost in the end, unfortunately, but because I was able to draw this particular card, it actually kept me alive another turn to try and dig for an answer. This one is a pretty strong card, I feel. The fact that you're able to get artifacts back from your graveyard to your hand, and by it coming into play, and then whenever you play a legendary creature, it just allows you to get another piece. It's actually pretty strong, I feel. Psychosis Crawler, just an amazing card, period. Even whenever it first came out. And if you notice, I have a lot of card draw mechanics, so just drawing and draining, or essentially dealing damage to my opponent, and just having a big beater with this is pretty cool. It was pretty fun. Precursor Golem, if you don't know it, this is just an insane 5 mana 3/3. Paying 5 mana for a 3/3 initially is not the greatest, but the fact that it allows you, when it enters, it makes an additional 2 3/3 colorless golems, so that's 5 mana for 9 power and toughness total. The only drawback being that if this is targeted, or I'm sorry, a single golem, so any single golem on the board, then all those golems get targeted by the effect as well. So let's say someone giant growths you giant growth your 1 golem, all your golems get a copy and giant growth as well. So it's just a powerful card. The only drawback being if your opponent plays a removal spell and targets one of your golems, it gets rid of all of them as well. So something to keep in mind. Unleash Shell, since I had two, I decided to only run the one because I needed a little bit more removal at the higher end, which this did help a couple times. Just making sure I don't have anything in the back there. This one's a pretty decent 6 mana 3/6. There's multiple times I either cast it at the 3 mana prototype as a 1/3, or I cast it as a 6 mana 3/6 that as the 3/6. But this is just solid mana ramp, and it's a decent body, so that's why I decided to run this one. I like that card a lot myself. This one's a pretty powerful. Yes, it's 8 mana for 5/5 fire breathing. That's expensive, but the fact that you can also prototype it as a 3 mana 1/3 with the same fire breathing and flying is a pretty decent card. And I believe I'm about to get to, yep, there they are, the Transformers cards. The reasons that I decided to run some of these creatures as well. Here we have Megatron Tyrant. I did not really have too much synergy to go with Megatron himself. I just wanted to run it because that's going to be probably one of the few times I'll be able to run the Transformers in draft, and this guy is just pretty powerful. Oops. And then his backside, being the tank that it is, you're able to essentially kill off a creature and deal extra damage to your opponent. I never actually took advantage of this particular effect. It was more about the front side, and having your opponents not be able to cast any spells during your combat step is pretty decent. And then we have here the Ultra Magnus Tactician. This card is pretty insane. The fact that when it comes to the Transformers cards, the fact that you're allowed to essentially cast them for their reverse side by paying the alternate cost is pretty crazy. This one being, whenever he attacks, you can put a artifact creature card from your hand tapped and attacking your opponent as well. And if you do that, you convert it, so you turn it to the other side. So for this side, whenever he attacks, right off the bat, your creatures, whenever he attacks, attacking creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. And if the creatures have total power 8 or greater, then you convert it again. So casting this for this side and declaring attack with this, as long as you have that formidable, multiple times I actually cast, I would declare the attack, and because it converts on the attack trigger, it turns it into the 7/7 on the attack. Now the drawback being, whenever you attack as well, when that's on this side, putting the creature into play, it'll turn him over into the 4/7. But the fact that, like, casting this as a 5 mana, attacking with enough power, and then turning it from a 4/7 straight into a 7/7 beater, one of my opponents just were not able to keep up, and I just kept beating them every turn with this, and it was pretty insane. So yeah, going third place with this one, it was a lot of fun. I would definitely like to do a collector draft again, but they're not cheap. So we'll definitely have to avoid those for now. But we do have some product here to go through. So first off, we'll save the promo packs for last. We'll go ahead and just do some of the draft packs for now. We did pull some pretty awesome things in both. I mean, the fact that I pulled that Gix as well, I'm already pretty happy about it. So here's hoping we pull some fun things in these particular packs. Going off the bat, so these are the ones where the rares in the front. We got ourselves the Loyal Bodyguard. I feel like this is just fun for Legendary Matters decks. And so there's that. Got ourselves another Liquid Metal Coating. Now we'll go ahead and put that here. Got ourselves some commons and uncommons. And then just going to kind of go through these pretty quick, because at this point I'm pretty sure everyone's already gone through their fair share of Brothers War. And if you haven't, go ahead and take the time to pause the video and take a look at the material. I hope everyone's had a chance to at least get to play with some of the cards, and if you haven't gotten your hands on any, I do strongly recommend trying to get some, because there are some fun cards in the set. Of course, grabbing cards within your means. And then that's definitely a hit. Look at that. That's a Saheeli Filigree. I don't know how to pronounce that. But that's a Planeswalker. That's I think this is the first Planeswalker that I've pulled from this particular set. And this one's actually a pretty good Saheeli, so there's that. I'm super hyped for that. The Symmetry Matrix, Engineers, and the Butcher. So those are uncommons. But yeah, I'd say I did pretty well with already so far. Out of 2 packs, getting 1 mythic is already pretty good. So I mean, whatever we else we pull at this point, statistic wise, obviously it's not the worst. And here's hoping we pull some more. Um, the fact that the Transformers cards are an option. Oh, getting sidetracked here, but if you noticed, the first 2 packs didn't have the lands. They didn't have basic lands in every single pack, which part of me is conflicted on that, but then another part of me is like, that's actually kind of neat. The fact that these particular lands are a little bit more unique. They're not just in every single pack. So, and I really like the way that all of these lands look. So, if you didn't watch my collector booster draft or collector booster box opening video earlier, these lands just look amazing, and I hope to get my hands on more. that's uh that's another mythic right there, Platinum Angel, and I personally am a big fan of the card. I know this came out originally in one of the Mirrodin blocks, and it's just been an amazing card. And yeah, that's awesome. That's definitely going in another one of my commander decks. And then we got ourselves a borderless brushland. Not the greatest rare, but we already got the mythic Platinum Angel, so I'd say that this pack was already a win. I'm not even like, that's pretty awesome, and it is at least the borderless version, so there is definitely that. And then we got ourselves our commons and uncommons, and then now we have a fun old collector pack here, because since I got was it third or fourth place? I forget at the moment, but I got a place to where I got prize. So this is that prize pack. Here's hoping we get either a serialized artifact card or one of those shattered. And I realized in my last video I said the stained glass. Technically, those are the ones are in this set. The Transformers are called shattered glass. So my apologies on the incorrect naming of the said card. But regardless, here's hoping I get one of those in this particular pack. In that particular draft itself, no one pulled any of the serialized cards, and no one pulled any of the shattered glass Transformers. But here's hoping. I mean, there's a chance right here. So let's take a look. This one I'm going to take a little bit more time. Take a look at our commons and uncommons here. I do like the fact that there's multiple versions of Urza and Mishra in this particular set. Kind of their travels through the stories, and this has got to be my second favorite land. It's just the way that the way it looks, the fact that it looks like someone pointed it out to me. Number one, the birds on the card right there look like dust at first, but those are actual birds that are on the card. Then the second point is that it looks kind of like one of the angels from Evangelion. If anyone's watched that particular anime, definitely a trippy one. It's a little bit older, and I think they remade it, but I'm a big fan of that land. All right, first rare, we got a Razorlash Transmogrant. It's decent, but I'm not the big fan. Got ourselves a Feldon Ronin Excavator. It's okay. Got a Wondrous Crucible. What is this? Permanents you control have Ward 2. At the beginning of your end step, mill 2 cards and exile a non-land card at random from your graveyard. Copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. Wow. It does cost 7 mana to cast, but the fact that you can do that, that sounds like a lot of fun. I might do something with that. Got ourselves another liquid metal coating, so that's pretty neat. A pristine talisman. A Well of Lost Dreams. This one's okay. I know I have multiple versions, and it's not the most expensive card, but that's there. We got that. Got ourselves a Soundwave Sonic Spy. So this is actually one of the Transformers I haven't pulled yet. It's unfortunate it's not the Shattered Glass version, but it's pretty decent still. And it's the one that turns into a cassette tape. And it makes a couple tokens, so at least we have that. That's pretty fun. And we got ourselves a borderless Sculpting Steel. So no serialized cards and no Shattered Glass, but still pretty decent cards. And I do like Sculpting Steel. It's a pretty strong artifact card itself, and it's a pretty nice foil. And then we got ourselves a Soldier / Power Stone token, which I believe every single one of these tokens just have Power Stone on one side, and then it's something else on the other. So I could be wrong. Let me know. All right. Got 2 more packs to go. let's go ahead and do the Dominaria United promo pack first. And then we'll do this foil promo Brothers War pack. Super hyped to open those. Oh, and of course, codes are for whoever gets to it first. So here's the first code. And there you go. Enjoy that. Best of luck with the pulls on this. Hopefully you pull something good. If you pull something great, please let me know. I'd be happy to read the comment and know. So first card, we got ourselves an Ivy. Pretty fun commander card. I know that a lot of people have been enjoying that one. We got ourselves a Resolute Reinforcements. Pretty decent uncommon. And a Invoke the Winds. Not the craziest blue spell from the recent Kamigawa, but it's a pretty fun spell. So we got that. Then we got ourselves our final pack here. Alrighty, first the code. There you go. Good luck to whoever gets this one. If you did get the first one, please let someone else get this one. And I mean, if you happen to get both, more power to you. I'm not going to stop you from getting both. I can't stop you from getting both. It is how it is, but do please share. Oh, oops. Oh, wow. Making mistakes. Dropping the things. So we got our first card is a Transmogrant's Crown. Pretty decent card. I know in Limited this actually did a lot of work. Now, I don't know if there's going to be much play outside of Limited for this, but we'll have to wait and see. Got ourselves a Flow of Knowledge. Not the worst, not the best. Ooh, that's a Timeless Lotus foil promo. That is pretty looking. Look at that. I forget the value of this particular card off the top of my head, but I do remember the last I looked for a regular foil, if I remember correctly, it was up in at least a double digits. So that's a foil promo stamped version. So here's hoping that's worth something nice. So that's going to go into my 5-color Joda deck for sure. That's pretty awesome. That's great. I know it's, I don't know if I remember, I forget if I mentioned the story or not, but I do remember someone in their promo pack, they got themselves a foil Meat Hook Massacre, and I'm like, this is a close, but not exact. Oh, and before I forget, the promo cards that we got as well for attending the event for the collector draft, we got that. Recruitment Officer, got ourselves a Thought Vessel, pretty decent promo there. Got ourselves a Braids the Arisen Nightmare. So that the art for this just looks amazing. Wanted to make sure to share that. And we got ourselves a Wall of Roots. So there we go, everyone. This one was kind of a long one tonight. But thank you so much again for sticking around and for everyone that made it to the end of the video. It is appreciated. If you didn't know, YouTube does keep track of how long people are watching the video. So it is appreciated. So thank you again. Do please take the time to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. And then if you have the time, share it with a buddy. Have them to enjoy the stuff that I have here. I hope everyone does enjoy the content because I'm going to keep trying to do more. With everything kind of slowing down, well, we have Christmas coming up, so we'll see if I'm able to slow down enough. But I still have my pre-release kits to go over with everybody, and I do have another draft I'll be attending tomorrow. So here's hoping that I pull some fun stuff tomorrow as well. Thank you again, everyone, for sticking to the end. You guys have a wonderful evening, and never forget, Senpai didn't notice. Good night.